Today on the Recovery Couch, I'm so excited because we're sitting down with someone who has deeply influenced my journey as a man, my journey as a warrior, and my journey as a son of God, Michael Thompson. Michael is the author of Search and Rescue, The Heart of a Warrior, and King Me, books that don't just challenge men, but invite them into transformation. Michael's also the founder of Zoweh, a ministry committed to helping men and women experience healing, freedom, and restoration through deep encounters with God. In today's conversation, we talk about the masculine identity, spiritual warfare, the battle for the heart, and what it really means to live as a beloved son. We also dive into the experiences hosted by Zoweh, what some call retreats, but what Michael will tell you are so much more than that. These experiences are powerful, intentional encounters that combine solitude, brotherhood, and the presence of God, and they change lives. This episode is sponsored by Greg Swartz at Remax Victory and Affiliates. Whether you're buying your first home, selling, or making a move, Greg brings integrity, expertise, and heart to every step of the journey. He's not just a realtor, he's a trusted guide who puts your needs first. Call Greg today at 937-477-8975 and let him help you find your next home. And don't forget to tell him the Recovery Couch sent you. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Recovery Couch. Today's guest is a true warrior and guide. My friend Michael Thompson is the author of Search and Rescue, The Heart of a Warrior, and King Me. Through his work with Zoweh, Michael leads what many call retreats. But trust me when I tell you they are far more than that. These experiences are powerful encounters with God that blend community and solitude and leave men forever changed. I know that because I have been blessed to be a part of one myself, and I can tell you it's the real deal. I'd like to please welcome to the Recovery Couch my big brother, Michael Thompson. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, so good to be with you, man. And yeah, that's an honoring introduction. Truly appreciate the brotherhood, the journey, when our paths crossed, and opportunities to connect over the books for sure, but also even today, this is good. I'm really excited to be with you, man.
Amen. Thank you for that. So let's cover one topic, dude, that we've never discussed since it happened when I came down to the encounter at Rockbridge in Virginia.
Rockbridge, yeah. Mm-hmm. The Young Life Camp, yeah. Yeah,
and I don't know how much you know about the situation, but I was like a last second. It was a last second conversation with Frank that I had, like, hey, is there still room for me to go? Is there room in a car? And he was like, we just had somebody cancel. Hop in, get up to the church tomorrow morning and come with us. Mm-hmm. Well, when I showed up, I was kind of nervous, Michael, because I go up to the registration table and they're like, what's your name? And I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to be dishonest, here at at this Young Life camp,
Oh, but you were subbing in for the guy who had to get out. I got you.
Yeah. And so I told him the truth, and I think it was in one of your first sessions. You were like, and there's a guy here who
That's right.
came up to the register, and you handed me a little coin, and I still got it to this day.
Yeah. Last guy, you were last man in. Yeah, we heard you got kidnapped and brought to the weekend, and yeah, man, I would say it seems like every retreat conference weekend there's somebody like that, and man, are we paying attention to what is happening to that guy, because it's just it's so obvious with your storyline and what we can get into even to today. We won't have time, I'm sure, to cover as much as we would love to, but the men that get in like that last second, and things are arranged for, it just feels like the veil is really thin between the physical and spiritual realm, and then you look back like you have and just say, man, I couldn't have made that up. I could not, you know, you wouldn't. I couldn't have guessed, you know, what God had in store. So such courage on your part to even make that call to Frank, the great Frank Crockett, unbelievable man in the kingdom. He's a cowboy, man. That guy can herd men, and love him and what he's doing there in Dayton, Cincinnati, and stuff. And so anyway, I'm really glad they made room for you, and that you said, I want to go. You know, reminds me of Frodo, you know, kind of running out of the Shire. I'm going to go, going on an adventure. So,
yeah, I'll take a comparison to Frodo Baggins for sure.
Oh, I've been Frodo many times. Bilbo, Samwise, you know, we play all those characters in our story. But
yeah,
anyway,
for sure.
I forgot that though. I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, last man in. You're still in. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it, and there was so much in store for me. I think I wrote at the end. You asked if anybody had anything to say about the experience, and I wrote something. Actually, it just popped up in my Facebook feed as like a memory from years ago. And it was just everything that God and your ministry had in store for me through that experience. So when I say that in the introduction, for anybody listening out there, those are some of the truest words that I spoke. It was really at the very beginning of just an unbelievable spiritual experience for me. So, Michael, let's get into like, what was it in your life that just gave you a heart to want to minister to men and to regain masculinity? And how did that look to you before you started to put pen to paper?
Great question. I'll try to do it in a few minutes. You know, how far back, you know, do we go? Because I know you feel the same way, Brandon. I mean, I'm still a customer. I'm still, I mean, it's as much as we might try to arrange and work to facilitate and encourage and create these podcasts or environments like conferences and retreats. I still am a customer as much as I'm trying to coordinate and facilitate. So, and I'd go back to, this dates me pretty good, back to the Promise Keepers movement. That was the first men's initiative, men's ministry that I saw on a scale that was ridiculous. You know, 20,000, 40,000, a million man march thing. I mean, it was, I got to go to 4 or 5 of those, and that's where a lot of things, you know, started for me. And that was a decade in the 90s that they had their run. So, you know, that made me late 20s, 30s. Went to one with my dad in Memphis. So very, very, very impactful. And then my journey, early 2000, right around that area, I was with a great ministry called Campus Crusade. Was with them for 17 years, and loved it. And yet, probably about year 11, 12, yeah, right in there, I just found in my own, I'm mid to late 30s now. I've got 3 kids, probably under 10. I could do my job on campus and around the community, but I was parched, man. I was very dry. And so I did what I kind of learned to do, Brandon, was, double down, man. I need to do more Bible studies. I need to do more. Yeah, do more. Engage more. And so I had the brilliant idea, and, you know, I think some brilliant ideas are absolutely God's. I say brilliant tongue in cheek, because I had the idea, well, maybe I should go to seminary. I need to learn more. So there was a seminary, a Baptist seminary, not far down the road from where we are here in Durham, Chapel Hill area, North Carolina. And so I enrolled. A friend of mine and I did, and took me 7 years to kind of piece and parcel together a master's in biblical counseling. So that's 98 through '05. Well, 2000 is when, God kind of takes that direction I'm going, and he flanks me with Wild at Heart, and Eldridge's, millions of copies now, bestseller, still moving. And I've felt this, I know you know this, but I felt this for a long time and discovered this in those early years, and it's still true, that there's a reason why books like Wild at Heart and hopefully Heart of a Warrior and King Me and the books I got to write in those conferences, there's a reason why they strike a chord in the hearts of men. And Brandon, it's because there's a chord that's in the hearts of men that can be struck. And so when somebody puts words to, we see it with music, puts song and lyrics and music together that strikes those chords in us, it's because there's chords in us that have been made to be struck by the Trinity. As we are all image bearers, we carry that DNA in us. And so, however, dark or lost, we might get, those chords are in there, and it's a way home. It's a way home when they get struck. So for me, that was kind of the beginning of the men's ministry, so to speak. I was working primarily with college students, and by '02 and '03, I went out to an Eldridge conference that he did, similar to how the conference that you went to. The formats are very much the same. That's where I learned so much of that. And I started kind of moving more and more off campus to my friends and financial partners and, men in the community in Durham, Chapel Hill area. And I started coming more alive there than I was on the campus that I was working on. And men were responding differently, my contemporaries, if you want to say it that way, than 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. Not that they couldn't get it, but there's a certain mileage that's kind of required to resonate, I think, with our messages. And for 18 and 20-year-olds, it's kind of a forecast, which is good. But when you've got 30, 40, and 50-year-olds, they've experienced some things now that life is hard, marriage is hard, raising kids is hard, and it requires something of men to be in the roles that belong to men. And a lot of us didn't get the best examples or the greatest validation and initiations along the way. And so those were reasons that not only I started moving in that direction, but also because I felt like I could do some good in translating my experience, which I think is very, very special because it's mine, but it's also very, very normal. I see so many men hit that space of parched and dry, and service is kind of not doing it anymore. And nothing wrong with service. It's a great thing. Churches and many organizations need it, but it wasn't giving me life. And so I would say one of the greatest headlines I could give you would be, I started to trade in service for intimacy, service to God for intimacy with God. And even though, I'd grown up in the church, and here I am, a professional Christian in a full-time ministry, just got my master's in biblical counseling, but that, Brandon, would be kind of that's what happened to me. That's what God, did to me and for me. And that was the path that, I found more and more life, and I'm still on it. So that's how I got started and continue to move in that space.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I have so many notes here. First question there, Michael, is actually it's less of a question, more of a just a thought of. There's a part in the Heart of a Warrior where you're talking about where you just kind of went into some solitude time. It was on a mountain, or where you and you had an epiphany, basically. And it sounds like if you could summarize that epiphany that you had in that one-on-one time with God, it would be in that statement you just gave us. I started to trade in service to God with intimacy with God. Is that kind of the vision that He cast upon you in that at that point of your book? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I do. I was, yeah, again, I was in attendance, and we were invited to go spend some time alone with God and ask Him some questions. And I mean, again, my background was, mission, ministry, lots of coordinating, facilitating, teaching, guiding. And I was kind of taken aback, like, wait, we're going to go outside and ask God questions? And so I did, and the question was pretty unnerving, actually. The question that we were supposed to ask God was, how do you see me, God? Who am I to you? And I was a little bit concerned because some of the theology and my own inner critic, my own, we call it, Brandon, this false self, the one who the enemy uses to kind of keep us away from that intimacy with God. Well, I had a pretty good case of that. I had some things in the way of God's love for me. And so when I was going to step into that moment, I thought, this is not going to be good. Yeah, whatever God says it's going to be that trip to the principal's office. It's going to be somehow a bit diminishing, because I had grown up in spaces that God was more punitive than He was loving. I knew the theology that He was loving, but again, my experience Sunday after Sunday was, I'm the problem. I'm not doing it well, not doing it right. I got to get my crap together. Communion is just a reminder and brings some guilt. The end of the service, these were churches that sang the invitations at the end, so sometimes they'll just keep singing, and you think, man, this must be me again. So sitting on that side of the mountain was like, okay, and yeah, just that was when I think my heart was tender and God was ready, and so He broke some radio silence. I wasn't even sure God would speak, honestly, because I wasn't at that level that He would speak to me like a Paul or some of the pastors or the leaders of Promise Keepers or people who are far more important. So I had some pretty diminishing perspectives even going into that, and yet I told you my heart was kind of parched and dry. I mean, it was part of the mission for me, and when I went out there, and then when God began to whisper in my thoughts, it wasn't a audible speaker, but it was an internal speaker, that I heard Him say, I see you, and I love what you see. And He said, you're my Aragorn. And that was a time when Lord of the Rings was a really, really big deal. And I thought I was making some stuff up, honestly. A couple weeks later, and I wrote this story in the book, it's my 40th birthday, and my wife was compelled somehow, some way, Brandon, to get me a gift. She was aware of the journey I was on, and so she purchased a sword online, and she didn't. When I unwrapped it, I thought it was some golf clubs or maybe a shot. I mean, it's a long, big box, long box, and it was the sword of Aragorn, and I start crying. And it was really God saying, no, I meant it. Yeah, I see you. You're this ranger who's not, when you know the Aragorn story, I mean, he's really not who he's supposed to be. He's the heir to the throne of Gondor. He's very skilled. He's a dangerous man, but he's a good man, dangerous for good, as we say. And so it just came more and more and more clear God was after me. My wife wasn't sure that I would like that sword. It's just one that she couldn't get away from. So God kind of brokered a deal of confirmation in the gift of that sword. And I was, felt very seen and I was the beneficiary of a package of love from God through my wife, from a mountainside experience that I wasn't sure was real.
This episode of The Recovery Couch is brought to you by my friend JB Davis at Performance Chrysler, Dodge Jeep Ram in Centerville. I know JB personally, and I can tell you he's the real deal. He's honest, he's dependable, and he's committed to treating people the right way. So if you're looking for a vehicle and you want to work with someone you can trust, call JB at 513-267-5225 or stop by Performance Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Centerville and tell them the Recovery Couch sent you. I remember reading all that, and as you tell it, it has even more impact. I mean, God says to you, "I see you, and I love what I see."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's that chord every one of us wants to hear. I know it's happened to you. It's been a part of your. And I love that we're on the recovery couch. We're all in some kind of recovery. I love that, and the things that we need to recover from are typically how our hearts weren't handled well. We weren't loved well, and it's hard for a mom and dad, and people aren't going to love well all the time, and so there's a variety of how that can look. But when God starts to, really take us on that journey of, no, I'm gonna, if you'll let me, I'll love you. I will love you to life, and you start to see that and feel and experience that, it changes things. So, when you asked me earlier about how did I get into this, like I said, I was a customer for a long time, still am. And, those experiences like that, and I've had many more, are the things that really continue to fuel me, my heart for, I don't think it's as extraordinary as it is. I don't think it's, somehow exclusive. I think it can be a way that more and more and more men should and be able to experience and be in those situations where God can speak to them in ways that it's hard to even contain it in how He might do it and what it might look like. I've heard the wildest stories of how God's come for guys, men and women. So
Michael, we're talking. I mean, everything that we're talking about is centered in the hearts of men and women, and your mission is to regain your heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not your mission statement, but that is
from
everything that I've.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's from everything that we've been here in this community. In your message as much as any. And what I love is, I'll be honest with you, Michael, I didn't love this part at first. Going back and dealing with my wounding, right? In order to regain my heart, in order to become a warrior, you use a great reference from one of my favorite movies, and it's slipping my mind, the Scottish Braveheart.
Braveheart, yeah.
He's a great. Give us that reference because it's slipping my mind right now. When his uncle comes and he wants to go get his dad just died. He wants to go.
Yeah.
What's his uncle say to him?
So, the context of that. Or it's early in the story, early in the book. And I've read the book as I had to because the story resonated with me. but his uncle's name is Argyle, and William Wallace, as a boy, loses his dad in a Longshanks is the villain in this particular story, and he brings Scottish nobles together and basically tricks them into this summit, and that's how William loses his father. Is Wallace Longshanks kills these Scottish nobles, and so Argyle, his uncle, hears of all this and then and comes after this his young nephew, and it's just a beautiful part of the film and story, and is almost it's not almost, it's a Christ type thing. This Argyle character who comes to rescue and recover young Wallace and takes him with him. And the next scene, after they literally ride off on a wagon, after some incredible moments between them and the funeral and the memorial service of his dad, William even says, I don't want to go with you. He said, well, you're coming with me. And so he takes him, and when you see Mel Gibson, William Wallace, the next scene, he's a man, and he's come back to this Scottish village, and you start to see over the next several scenes the impact of his uncle Argyle, how he has been loved and trained, and how he's learned of a larger world than the one that was just even in his village. And I think that's really important for a man, to be shown a larger world, a larger spiritual world, the two realms, and specifically, Brandon, those two kingdoms that are at war over you and me, and image bearers, the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of light. I mean, we see these themes in all the epic films, good versus evil, and we can't not tell that story, because that's our story. As much as people might think it's a philosophy or a theory, it's a reality in the scriptures, and it's a reality that we actually know pretty well, especially, and I love the recovery community specifically for that reason. They know, man. You don't have to convince them that there's a war going on, there's a battle going on. They're at the center of it, and the warfare talks that we do, you can tell afterwards. Some of those recovery guys will just come up and say, "Man, I knew it. Let me tell you, they've heard the voices of the enemy, and they're looking for hope. How can I defeat? When are you gonna begin to train us in how to defeat this stuff, or get free from this stuff? And that's where we go into some of the let's look at the wounding that's happened in our story long before we ever were even aware there was a war going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Michael. So let's keep it specific to folks in recovery. What does it look like, in your opinion, from all the training that you have, and from the literature that you've wrote? What would be the first step that you would take somebody in recovery to, when they just like, hey, I've had enough. I've been battling this darkness for far too long, and it's been beating me up.
Yeah.
What do I do, Michael? What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a huge first step. The courage to see it and admit it, and I think in in some of the recovery in AA, it's the bottom, finding where the bottom is. I've heard the phrase in that arena, being sick and tired of being sick and tired, and it's somebody who's struggled in recovery has been there many times. Very few spin out of that the first times. I've had the privilege of being in recovery centers and addiction spaces, and there's guys there for the second, third, fourth time. Bless them, man. That's so courageous to come back because they're hopeful, and so I think that they're the crowd that's even so attuned to the reality that this thing, the addiction now, it's physiological, it's definitely mental and emotional, and it's working, with all kinds of levels of dopamine and alcohol and other drugs are for many the antidepressant that of choice. So there's symptoms that they're treating it with, and that I think is why we have a good place, a soft place, a hopeful place for those who really know that they need and are in recovery. We call it the hungry and thirsty, guys who come to meetings, guys who, I know guys that they're in them five days a week or more. They're in that rhythm of, I need to put myself in an environment that's going to be helpful, encouraging, maybe hard, but whatever it takes, And when they when we put ourselves in that place, I think it's like you did when you chased after the bus. You weren't quite sure. You had no idea what you were getting into and in for, but you were, I got to try something. This, you had experiences there at Southbrook and Frank Crockett and the church and the many, many, many men that are in that room. Maybe I'll try this, and when you're hungry I went to seminary, because I was hungry and thirsty. This isn't good, when you feel, I'll say it this way, not yourself, and yet you're not even sure what yourself is. So I think those who Jesus seemed to have some of the greatest impact in their lives were not the religious. He went toe to toe with those cats over and over. He had some of the absolutely greatest impact on those who were hurting, and yet hopeful, those who culture, society, from some choices of their own, but also, Brandon, from a lot of choices of other people in their lives contributed. So it's not just one thing, but rather a series of, you might say, unfortunate events and relationships that move our hearts into these areas and places of compromise. And man, getting out of some of those caves is nothing short of miraculous. And that's kind of the idea, to trust that God's in that business of the miraculous, and to rescue and redeem, and then to begin the restoration process for you, for me. That's extremely hopeful and impactful.
So what would you think would be the first step for somebody who's just been losing battle after battle in this war? Like they have lost how would they? What would be the first thing you would tell them if they come to you and say, I need to regain my heart? And like you said a minute ago, you said some of us don't, at some point we don't even know who we are.
Yeah.
Who would you tell them they are, and how could they regain?
Ideally, it would lead right into okay, Brandon. You got a couple hours? Okay, good. Let's tell me your story, bud. What happened to you? And start. I want to start at the beginning. So many of us have never even considered that. I love the step of a fierce inventory, taking a inventory. That's gathering, collecting all the dots of your life and starting to connect them. And I think that's a great first step. If somebody's asking, let me say, if somebody's asking that question, like you just asked, they've already taken the first step. Now, where I would take them is, tell me your story. Because it's in the story that you find the clues, and some of them are pretty glaring. You find divorce in their family when they're young, or you find dad was alcoholic, or you find mom. I mean, you find these characters that start to bring their contribution to, young Brandon, young Michael's lives at 4, 5, and 6. And all right, you start to see the trajectory. Now, not everybody that has had that kind of background in, early years ends up in the same place. But I would say that everybody who's had that background is carrying the echoes, the effect of those early years, and maybe for somebody it's just they've become addicted to achievement and accomplishment, valedictorians, going to be a CEO when they're in their 20s. But man, we've seen more wealthy people have greater train wrecks than, it's not, this is not contained to some level of income or race, or it's all, this thing is not discriminating what the enemy's trying to do to image bearers. And so they'll use anything, everything, anybody and everybody they can to wound and reinforce those wounds in a man's life, in a woman's life, starting in boyhood and girlhood. So that's why I say story. What happened? And once you start to see some of those anchor points, some of those significant moments, when the enemy gets that, when the enemy gets that contract, here's the pen, here's the paper, sign it. And at the top of it, it says, you're on your own. That is one of the greatest accomplishments of the kingdom of darkness, is convincing a boy or girl early, you're on your own. You're going to have to arrange for this. You're going to have to protect yourself. And maybe it's delayed until you're 12, 14, 16, 18. But I have not found anybody who has not had a moment that they can actually go back to and tell me the story. If I were to say, so Brandon, when did that happen to you? When did you begin to believe and sign the consent form that you're on your own?
For me, probably about somewhere between 6 and 9 years old. There was things that, in my life that happened, early childhood sexual trauma, Michael, and that made me, feel like there's no protection, on this earth.
Of course.
I'm not able to be protected from, these types of things, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, at a super early age.
Sorry, bro. That's a heavy one.
It's common.
Too common.
It's unfortunately it's common. But yeah, so at a super early age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, mine was a little delayed. Mom and Dad were together, and I was the oldest of 4, and a little bit of Leave It to Beaver, if you remember that, Andy Griffith, Happy Days in some ways, but I think I'm in alignment with any of us who had escaped, what you did, or didn't happen, to us. By the time you hit about 10, there's things like pornography that the average age is still 9 and 10. They're going to find boys, and now they're finding girls in record-breaking numbers and percentages. So sexual trauma is coming, whether it was a real physical abuse or just the emotional and circuit-blowing abuse that happens when pornography, comes into the story. That's another good mile marker. Not good, but defined. When did that happen to you? But you get into 10, 11, 12, you're talking about the jungle of middle school and what we used to call junior high. And man, that place is dangerous. Trying to fit in, hoping to belong. Something that doesn't typically. It's just not. I'm telling you, it's just all the experience. It's not present in fourth grade. Everybody, gets. It starts to. It can, but fourth grade, boys can play with girls, girls with boys. Everybody gets picked. Recess, playground. I mean, it's. I'm not saying there's not shaming moments in fourth grade, but man, you ask a third grade class or fourth grade class a question like, "Hey, what do you want to be when you get older?" Their hands are all still up. I mean, they're ready to tell you, the majority of them. And you want to look at those ones that aren't raising their hands. Something's already going on.
Wow.
In that grade. But by the time you get to seventh grade and eighth grade, they're not sure they can trust you, the question. I mean, they're not raising their hand. And the ones who are looked at as suck up, kiss up, as silly. If I could use, that keep it light. But I mean, so there's the story again, of certain components that seem to be consistent with what the enemy wants to do to hearts. And when we talk about hearts, we're talking about this core of being, not the hallmark heart. The biblical heart is a magnificent organ of perception, organ of belief. And so your perspectives, your attitudes, your beliefs are stored there, just to kind of simplify it in many ways. And from there come the operating systems and how you're going to navigate life. So what does that look like, when you're fourth, fifth, sixth grade, eighth grade? How does that look when now you're 24, you're 28, you're 30? That stuff doesn't go away. It actually starts to manifest itself in what can be some pretty toxic spaces and pretty toxic ways. So if you're dealing with addiction, back to that question, Brandon, that's a real thing, and it can be chemical. There's ways to kind of detox to and those early weeks and early days are hard because your body it's been trained. So there's such a significant physiological thing to overcome to get free from whatever drug it is. But there's the bigger question is, how did it find you? Why do you take it? What is it in your story that this way? And I like I said, there's a lot of drugs that aren't achievement, accomplishment, ways of proving that I'm worth your attention. Fear is another one. Guilt and shame are powerful drugs, to use that metaphor. The ways that we learn from if we're on our own, then I've got to figure out how to make this life work, and either not get hurt, and at the same time somehow, some way get noticed, be wanted, belong.
That's
and
a
all
hard
of that.
condition.
We're wired. C.S. Lewis has some great stuff on this whole idea, but he says God is the fuel that the heart is to run on. But man, I've been to so many other filling stations and tried, and over time it can do some wear and tear on the engine and on the components. And so how do you get that stuff out so that you can get the good stuff in? That's part of the journey of the storytelling, is what have I believed that isn't true about me, about God, about who I am. And, if I've got here's my shelves of all kinds of things that's a trophy case. It doesn't look like one because there's not a lot of trophies there, but that coin that you talked about that you got,
Yeah.
I got coins up there. I got things that people have given me to validate me, that I believe God gave them to give to me, to bring validation, or to continue to say, yeah, I wasn't kidding, Michael, when I showed you that or told you that. So to be affirmed, to be seen, those are the powerful kingdom kind of supplements, you could say. I don't want to call them drugs, but those are the things that we're made to run on: God's love, his attention. And if I was believing, like I said, for so long, that if he gave me his attention, it would not be good, then I had something in the way of my perception of God that goes back, through my going up through church, that was pretty heavy-handed, pretty fundamental, and I'm sin and me, and I'm the problem, and so I had to get some files, turned in and rearranged, and in order for God to be able to love me and get through some of the criticism, self-criticism, diminishment that I was walking with, and all the while trying to prove that I don't have that in me. But you're still the vote. You're still the one. I'm like a homeless person, beggar, trying to, hey, would you give me some affirmation? Would you give me some applause? Would you give me a like? Would you give me a thumbs up? Would you tell me that you see, and what you see you like? That's all of those ingredients, Brandon, I think, are part of what the enemy can use against us. And it's not about shutting that stuff down. It's about plugging that stuff into the real source of love and life, and that's the Trinity. And it's easier said than done. It looks good on a wall. It looks good on a formula. It looks good on paper. But it to recover is really to do the work. And I think that's another thing the recovery community is known for. Those guys, men and women, they're working. They're working it out. They're leaning in. They are 12-stepping it. They're celebrate recovery. They're sponsors. I mean, the structure of it, it's probably the greatest discipleship initiative in the world that I've ever seen. You can go to a meeting anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. It's grown to that, and they'll welcome you. You're welcome. And you're with your people. Don't want to get too wild here but the church could take some pretty serious notes from, and I think the church does have people that come who identify themselves as sinners. And I think the trick would be, Brandon, can we help those people identify themselves as sons and daughters, and that sin is not the truest thing about them.
Yeah, and it's tough. I get what you're saying. It's tough not to paint that picture of, hey, man, the AA is doing great with discipleship, without kind of giving the illustration of, like, the church could take some notes. Like, you got to kind of build a contrast in that illustration. But I think the church is making strides from everything that I've seen. Just embracing the fact that, like, we are in this war that you talk about in your books. Yeah. We are, and we can't. We have to build a contrast too as a church. Like, we are preaching the light, but there is a darkness that when you leave this sanctuary is going to be right after you.
Yeah. I never heard that growing up. I never really heard that explained. It might have been, Brandon, but I don't know that I was either. I wasn't paying attention, missed that Sunday or that series. But I just grew up thinking there was a couple characters in the story, me and God, and I'm the one that's the problem. So I agree with you. I think the church is making some strides in it. But if sin is the central message of the church, rather than the invitation to be something more, you're gonna produce. Discipleship is about production, life on life, and therefore go and make disciples. Teaching them, Jesus said, the things that I taught you. And I think that if sin and the cross are at the center of your message, then you're gonna produce and reproduce primarily sinners saved by grace, and try to stop doing that, try to do better, and hopefully we'll all make it. I know it's kind of a dark way to say it, but at the same time, if sonship, daughtership, your Jesus in you and you in Jesus is a glorious thing. If that's the center of your message, I think you're going to produce more confident sons and daughters of the kingdom who walk and live and offer the love that they're experiencing. And I think that's why I love about the recovery couch, your book, the fourth step. I'd love to. Why did you write that? You asked me the big question about writing. Why were you so compelled to write that?
Oh yeah, thanks, Michael. Because in my journey in addiction and prison, I saw a lot of the broken people that had loving hearts that society had shunned. And I don't want to generalize society as like, because at one point in time I shunned them too, and then I was among them, and I realized, and I almost get emotional saying this. I realize, that they're people just like me.
Right.
They're a loved son of somebody. They're a loved daughter of somebody. They're somebody's child. They're somebody's parent. And they felt too broken to feel like that they could ever make anything of their life. And a large part of that is because of the choices they made that they have to own. But there's also a piece of it that is the way that we were taught in those broken, legalistic, upbringings we were brought up in with a punitive God, to use your words, that we were taught that we were supposed to shun and not associate. And so they have to own their choices, but there's also this like side of it that like they don't believe that society will ever accept them. So my book, I wanted to show them it's not about what anybody says about you. It's not about what you've done. It's not and a lot of these lessons I learned from studying The Heart of a Warrior, Michael. It's more about who you are. You're loved by God, and anybody else's opinion really, truly, it don't matter. So, and I have a heart. I love those people sometimes, and this is to my detriment, Michael. Sometimes I get in like really spiritual, situations, and like I'll hear a little legalistic religion, and I'll probably be harder on that person than I am like somebody who just used, or like I have more of a heart for the broken. And I'm not saying that's right, and I'm not saying that's wrong. That's just I'm just admitting that's me.
Yeah.
So I
feel that.
Yeah, that was my whole angle. Like, hey, guys, I don't really want to tell everybody all this, but this is how broken I was. This is how lost in the darkness I was. This episode of The Recovery Couch is brought to you by True Story Media, where real stories find their voice. Whether it's podcasting, video production, or publishing powerful testimonies, True Story Media exists to help people share messages that matter. If you've got a story of transformation, faith, or recovery, True Story Media will help you tell it with excellence and impact. You can learn more about True Story Media at www.recoverycouch.com so you can start telling your true story today. I've sat in many, many rooms and listened to Michael speak on many occasions, and every single time I walk away richer and fuller and thankful that I had an opportunity to hear the heart of a man who truly cares. In part one of our conversation with Michael, we explored what it means to live as a beloved son of God. We explored the wounds that shape our identity and the battle that every man faces to reclaim his own heart. We also talked about the power of Zoweh's experiences, transformative encounters with God that bring healing and clarity to men from all walks of life. This conversation was raw, this conversation was rich, and this conversation was full of truth. Please make sure that you tune in next week for part 2 of our conversation with Michael Thompson, where we go even deeper into restoration, spiritual warfare, and walking in true masculine strength.